Good morning, friends. We have been talking about different literary terms and concepts all these days. In this part of my lecture, I shall deal with the literary terms beginning with the letter R, in which I shall first talk about the term reading, which is a very much familiar term. Friends, reading is a cognitive process, which means it is a process which occurs in your brain. And this process, which we termed as a cognitive process, involves decoding symbols to arrive at meaning. You must be familiar with the terms such as decoding and encoding. So, decoding is the process in which we try to understand the meaning of the words, sentences, etc. Language is a kind of code. Means we try to capture our ideas, thoughts in the form of these codes or symbols. And in reading, a decoding process takes place. While in writing, the writer encodes. Encode is the process involved in both speaking and writing. We capture our ideas, thoughts, and we represent them in the form of the linguistic symbols, alternatively codes. And as listeners or readers, we decode these symbols or codes and we come to the meanings of those symbols. Of course, reading, as I mentioned earlier, is a process. There are different reasons for reading. The reasons for reading may vary, may change from person to person. But the primary purpose of reading is to understand the text. Hence, reading is a thinking process. It is a process of understanding the text. Reading allows the reader to use what he or she may already know, also called prior knowledge. Means we have some background knowledge, some social, cultural, political knowledge, and we try to understand the text in the context of that knowledge. Reading most often means the act of reading meaning into a printed text. So it is the process whereby the text becomes a more or less coherent experience in the mind of the reader. So reading in this sense is the outcome of an interpretation of the text or forms the basis for subsequent interpretation. So it is a process of interpreting the text. It is the outcome of an interpretation of the text. We try to interpret. And based on that, further we go on interpreting the text. So reading and interpretations are often treated as synonymous. They are synonyms in this sense. And reading can be either silent or loud. As we talk about silent reading and loud reading, in silent reading, we read to ourselves, whereas in loud reading, we read it for others. So this is how we understand the term reading as a cognitive process which involves decoding symbols to come to the meaning, to understand the text. At the same time, it is the process of interpretation. We try to interpret the meaning into that particular text with the basis of our prior knowledge. Another term that I would like to introduce you people to is the term reception. Reception is the term used for the understanding or popularity of literary work at a given moment, either past or present. Is when the book is published or across subsequent centuries as well. For example, we have been reading William Shakespeare and other English writers of 16th century, 17th century. So it is a kind of what we call understanding or popularity of literary work in a given time, maybe in the past or present. For example, Shakespeare was little understood as, or is little understood as seems to us today in the 18th century, but he was rediscovered by romantic critics. These critics include both German and English. And Shakespeare was drastically reinterpreted by the critics in 20th century. So we understand that the reception of Shakespeare's text in 18th century was different that of from that of 20th century. Maybe in case of 17th century as well, the reception of William Shakespeare's text was different. Similarly, John Donne, the metaphysical poet, was neglected throughout the 18th and 20th centuries, but he was rediscovered in the 20th century. So, on this basis, we come across the concept of a constantly changing reception from time to time. And this concept of constantly changing reception serves as a corrective to that implied by the term survival of an author's works. Means a text might be received differently in different centuries. So it suggests that a work is best understood in the author's lifetime and at the moment of publication. Later, it may be reinterpreted in a drastic manner, so the reception in the latter stages may change, and its impact can only fade or wither. Means the role of the critic is analogous to that of the restorer of old masters. So many works take time to be understood and to be appreciated. Means they may not be received positively at the time of publication, but with time they they may be understood and appreciated by the readers and critics. Similarly, the case of films. Many of the films are often neglected in the beginning of their release, means after soon after the release. But with the spread of through the word of mouth, people, the audience, may visit the cinema for watching this. For example, Virgil's Aeneid, after a long period of rejection by romantic critics as a second-rate and imperialistic, suddenly increase in popularity and understanding in the USA during the Vietnam War, when Virgil's view of war as a progressive corruption of moral standard evoked response, which would have been impossible during the Victorian England, Victorian England, we can say, or Victorian period. So, what we understand through this discussion is that the term reception means understanding of the text or popularity of literary work, which may change from time to time. The reception is not what we call mm, const, a stable phenomenon as such. Rather, Reception is constantly changing. Thank you.